Acting President. I rise to speak on the motion moved by the Honourable Brad Pettit and thank him for the opportunity to speak on homelessness and housing. We're all aware that there's a housing crisis in this nation. It's affecting the whole country and indeed other parts of the world, and WA has certainly not been immune to those circumstances. It's a complex situation impacted by a variety of factors, many of which couldn't have ever been accurately predicted. Accurately predicting the circumstances under which someone might find themselves homeless is, as the Honourable Kate Dowse pointed out, also quite unpredictable. She referred to that sliding door moment, and it wasn't actually the subject in which I was going to speak, but it reminded me of my own sliding door moment. And it allows me to touch on some other circumstances which can impact people and the concept of homelessness. And so I found myself homeless at the age of, I would have been in my early 30s. I had a suitcase of things in my car on the side of the road as myself and my daughter, and we slept in the car on the side of the road. There's an initiative in Geraldton that raises money for people who are homeless, sleeping in your car initiative, and it's about raising funds, and the whole community gathers on the field to sleep in their car. And I've never been able to bring myself to participate because it's just a little bit too real for me. And that memory is something that I can't quite comprehend, can't quite bring myself to participate in. People find themselves homeless for a whole range of reasons. I mean, I was educated, I thought that I had my life on track, and the situation that I found myself in was one of fleeing the environment. And whilst I was lucky that I could finally make my way to the other side of the country and live with family, by the current categories, I was still a homeless person. I didn't have an income, I didn't have a roof over my head, I didn't have any possessions, and I had 2 children to raise. Whilst I was really fortunate in that I managed to claw my way back and find myself a home, and I'm very fortunate now that I own a home, I still remain deeply resentful that this happened to me, and I remain deeply resentful every time I look at my superannuation. Because the Honourable Kate Dowse touched on this idea of older women finding themselves homeless and unable to access superannuation, not having superannuation. But I can tell you that having found myself, not by choice, as a sole parent, and often finding myself having to step out of the workforce or only participate part-time in the workforce, a man of the same age and experience and skills as me has much more superannuation than me and will retire with much more money than me. And I find that deeply unfair, and that is another condition that impacts women. So I don't necessarily agree that it's something that only impacts older women. I think it's a condition that impacts women more often than we realise. And I know that, having experienced this myself, it's something that I really struggled to seek help and support with, because you don't want to talk about it, it's embarrassing. So I do think that this idea of homelessness and housing is a really complex situation, and it can arise at all sorts of times and moments throughout someone's life that they can't necessarily anticipate. But I do think it's one that's being rigorously addressed by the McGowan Government, and I am really pleased by the size and scope of the recent announcement by our Housing Minister, John Carey. I think that 3,300 new social housing properties is an excellent start. I note that the Honourable Brad Pettit referred to it as a good start, quite an understated description, I think, when we talk about a record social housing investment of 275 new regional homes by 2023, $875 million to boost social housing, a state budget that will invest $2.1 billion into social housing over 4 years. Now, I'm not sure what sort of financials you're used to handling, the Honourable Brad Pettit, but I'm not sure that I would describe that sort of money as a good start. I think it's a very significant and rigorous and substantive contribution to addressing social housing, and I think 3,300 social homes is an excellent endeavour made by the McGowan Government, and one that I'm really pleased that Minister John Carey was able to secure for us. I also note that the 2 members across the room who rose in support of the Green members' motion in the Honourable Brad Pettit The Honourable Steve Martin referred to the Labor Party as one of a social conscience, and indeed I would agree, we are a party with a strong social conscience. And we do have a conscience, and I find it quite peculiar that the Honourable Steve Martin would choose to use a word like conscience in the current context of the Liberal Party. I would point out to the Honourable Steve Martin that it was the Honourable Nick Garan who wrote, "As for the Greens, they are the reason I'm in this game. #Greens fake humans." That's the attitude that the Liberal Party have towards the Greens. So I would think deeply and considerably about aligning yourself with a party that doesn't necessarily respect the outcomes that you're hoping to achieve for the community. I'd like to now also focus on the regional contribution of the announcement. This is, I live in the regions, it's the regions that are in my remit and that I'm responsible for. So the new announcement includes $9 million for Spalding, a suburb in Geraldton that's got a lot of attention for the media, from the media of late, $5 million for Withers in Bunbury and $4 million for Spencer Park in Albany, along with another $2 million for overall planning and detailed scoping. In my home region, there was a significant housing issue to be addressed. It was something that was being keenly felt in Geraldton and the surrounding areas, and exacerbated by the fact that we had a cyclone in the region, so there was a lot of people who had homes destroyed or who had their homes deemed uninhabitable due to impacts by the cyclone. So those people were also having to find alternative accommodation in our region, and that certainly exacerbated and complicated the situation in our area as people were sort of looking around and in other areas to find accommodation. Indeed, it is the case that there are some boarded up houses and some houses that have become left empty for quite some time. Those houses weren't necessarily all state housing homes, though. But it has been the case then that this $9 million that has been dedicated to the Spalding precinct has been a direct outcome of the hard work and dedicated, consistent and measured advocacy of the new member for Geraldton, Lara Dalton. She has been the catalyst for this announcement in Geraldton, and I know that the Geraldton community is incredibly grateful for her dogged determination to see a positive outcome for that community. The money that has been announced has been informed by what they've called the Spalding Revitalisation Plan. It was something that was developed by the City of Geraldton and the Department of Community quite some time ago, and it had significant input from the community. But one of the things that this plan does is it does more than just provide housing. It looks at the overall community and what we want for community. So it looks at other things that need to happen alongside it. So it's contributing work that creates a community that is more inclusive, it's more accessible, it's safer for the whole community. So it's not just about providing housing. I think the key word in this social housing is the word social, and we need to do more than just put roofs over people's heads. It needs to be strategic, it needs to be thought out, it needs to be planned. So those things take a bit of time. And if we rush them and we do them in a way that is just whack up a house here or there, then what happens is we create a situation like we did have in Spalding, where streets were dead ends and they created clusters of issues and problems. And the new announcement by Minister Carey has sought to address that. So I'm incredibly grateful to that, and I'm grateful to you, Honourable Brad Pettit, for bringing up the issue of housing and homelessness. Unfortunately, don't support the motion, but I certainly support us having a social conscience.
The question is that the motion be agreed. The Honourable James Hayward.
Thank